Hi, this is Charles Kelly. Hope you're all well. Yesterday I reported that a judge had ruled that you can no longer say in your adverts or have a blanket policy that you do not accept tenants who are claiming benefits or so-called DSS tenants. And today I'm looking today at another probable attack coming up on us as property investors, and that is that the government is planning a capital gains tax grab on buy-to-let investors as well as other businesses, but I think it's primarily I think it's aimed at buy-to-let investors, and this is what experts are warning. This could come in the autumn budget. The UK Treasury has launched what they call a review of capital gains tax to ensure that the system is fit for purpose. Yeah, right. The review is nothing more than finding how they can screw a little bit more money out of us, because let's face it, we are a soft target, right? When they had a tax grab, when George Osborne, old Six Jobs George Osborne, had a tax grab and took away things like mortgage interest relief on smaller property investors who primarily had the properties in their own name but looked after the big boys with the limited companies, and he took away other reliefs as well, and just made it more difficult so that a lot of people are paying more tax. You know, what did we do? Nothing, because we're not really an organised group. We're not a group of, say, retired old age pensioners that can sort of rally and get a lot of sympathy from the public. I mean, most of the public probably hate us already, and why would they worry if the you landlords and you slum landlords and this what they're going to get taxed? You're bloody right and all, So we're a group that they can hit us with the tax grab, and there's not a lot we can do. Yes, we've got organisations like the NLA, but come on, they're pretty impotent, aren't they? What are they going to do? They probably go to the minister. Oh, can we meet you, minister? They're not going to do anything. If as a group we got together and did something like saying we're not going to pay tax this year, but it's not going to happen, is it? So they're just going to carry on grabbing tax from us, and this could come. I guess it's part of the move to pay for this multi-million, £billion spending spree that the government's gone on to save jobs or to stop jobs going so quickly. The furlough scheme and the bounce back loans that they're guaranteeing that, I think it's going to be subject to a lot of fraud. And all these measures that are just costing billions and billions every month. And then it's like, oh, let's spend £1 billion here. Let's give £1 billion to schools. Let's give a few more billion to the NHS. Let's build a hospital in East London, spend millions on that. And, all these billions being thrown around have all got to be paid for somehow. And that's going to come either through higher taxes or further borrowing that will be paid down the road, or printing money. The story is that Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the guy that runs the Treasury, has asked a body called the Office of Tax Simplification to investigate how capital gains tax are used for individuals and smaller businesses. And it says here, the review should identify opportunities relating to administrative and technical issues, as well as areas where the present rules can distort behaviour or do not meet their policy intent. They could be looking at perhaps that the capital gains tax is generally taxed at a lower rate than income tax, so maybe they think people are avoiding income tax. And he said, I'll be interested in any proposals from the OTS on the regime of allowances, exemptions, reliefs, and the treatment of losses within CGT, and the interactions of how gains are taxed compared to other types of tax. So they're looking at how you might be able to say, well, I won't draw money out of that situation through income tax. I'll pay the capital gains tax. Or it could be that they're looking at losses. I mean, if you've had a loss in a year, you can carry that forward. Maybe they're going to stop that. I don't know. I had a situation where I had a loss from a few years ago, and I was able to carry that forward for several years and keep my tax down for several years. So they're looking at all these things, and I think it's not going to be good news. They're not going to help us to pay less tax. It's going to be more tax. And, everybody knows they're going to do it. But if they put a couple of pence on income tax, everyone will be in uproar. But they can hit people like property investors because, who cares about them, really? So that's coming in the autumn. and he says, I mean, he mentioned reliefs and losses, and I just think it'll be higher tax bills for us. And capital gains are basically a tax on profits. The rates are set at 10% for basic income taxpayers, 20% for higher rate and additional rate taxpayers, but 18 and 28% where gains relate to residential property. And you get an allowance of something like 12,000 in any given year before you start paying the tax. This could apply to making money on shares as well, or selling a business, or you start a business, you work hard for many years, you pay your income tax, you pay all the rest of the VAT and everything else that you're registered for, and you collect tax on behalf of the government on PAYE and national insurance. And then at the end, if your business goes up in value, they say, well, we want a piece of that. Thank you very much. You've worked very hard, so we're going to take a piece of that business. I don't think it's fair. I think it stifles hard work and ambition, really. They should keep that tax as low as possible. And, the more you put up tax, the more people do to avoid tax. And, as I said, there are 2 million buy-to-let investors. Nobody really cares about them. And many of them are not big investors. They tend to be smaller investors, most of them, I'd say, who there might be an accidental landlord. They might have one or two properties because they don't trust the pension system anymore, because the pension system is completely broken anyway. So they think, well, I'll buy a property, pay that off over the next 20 years, and then use that to draw income in my retirement to supplement my old age pension, state pension, which may not be there, or maybe it will be pushed back. It's already been pushed back to 67. I think eventually the government will have to push that back further, so that we'll probably all be working into our 70s before we can draw a state pension. Why? Because there's no fund there. There's no fund with my name on it saying, this is your little pot of money, Charles, and when you retire you're going to get this. No, it's paid for as we go. So as taxpayers pay money, that money is then paid out to pensioners. It used to be allocated as national insurance. I'm not sure that completely covers it now. But clearly people are living longer. People that, in the past when this scheme was put into place after the war, people didn't really live that long in retirement. You'd be lucky to make 70. Now, I see people playing golf in their 90s. I see people riding around on bikes and going to gyms and doing yoga and Tai Chi in their 70s and 80s. And they look like they're going to live for a long, long time. And good luck to them. But, the longer they're living, the longer they're drawing that state pension, which is not really covered in the original plan when they started paying tax. Because clearly, if you've worked for, say, 35, 40 years, the amount of tax, and especially the national insurance, is quite small. The amount of tax you've paid in that time doesn't cover, another 30 years in retirement. It just doesn't. 25 years or 30 years, it won't cover it. Because if you think about the tax you pay, it's not a lot of money unless you're a really big earner. And, when you started work, maybe if a pensioner nowadays has started work in the 60s, what tax would they be paying? The average wage was probably £10 or £20 a week. That bit of tax they paid then can never really cover, the £100 a week that they're drawing now on a state pension, or it won't cover if they're in a government-linked final salary scheme that is not. There's no fund there like the NHS. When a nurse starts work in the 1960s or 1970s, earning a couple of £1,000s a year, the tax they've paid on that is no way going to cover their final salary when they retire now. And let's say they're retiring on £50,000 a year now, and they get a pension of half of that, £25,000 a year, and then they're going to draw that with index linking and inflation for the next, say, 20 or 30 years. That fund is worth over £1 million. They've never paid £1 million in tax over their lifetime. So what I'm saying is the system is basically broken, and it relies on new workers coming through to keep paying for these pension schemes of state earners and people who work for the state, which is probably about half the working population. So it just doesn't. The figures just don't add up, and that's why the government have moved up the pension age for women. And some feel unfairly. Men now at 67. You look at and in addition to people living longer, countries in the West have got falling birth rates. Japan, UK, France, Germany, Italy, all got falling birth rates. And really, it's the immigrants coming in, that the younger ones, that are probably going to pay for the pensions of people who are retiring. So it's always saying, we'll stop immigration, but if you do that, you're not going to get any young people. You're not going to get enough young people. We've actually got quite a serious problem with falling birth rates and people living longer, and the fact that these state schemes are just not. There's no fund there, because when they started these schemes in the war, they probably had 3 or 4 people working for every one retired. Now it's probably more like 2 to 3 people working for everyone retired. In a few years' time, it's going to be 2 or even 1 to 1. Well, that doesn't add up, because your tax you paid, it also covers things like education, the health, the infrastructure we see around us, policing, all the security and all these things that keep the country running. That was to be paid for out of taxes. So the tax you paid is just not enough to cover all these pension schemes, and people are not saving enough towards pensions in private schemes. No way. In a private scheme, you'd need to. I was a financial advisor for many years. I've written a book on money called Yes, Money Can Buy You Happiness, and I know that people were never saving enough into their pension schemes if they had to rely on it themselves. Yes, we've got the work-based pension scheme now, but that's only a pittance what's going in there, and the fact that scheme is just a money purchase scheme. So it all depends on the fund growth in the future and what's left in that fund and what that pension will buy you. It's not a final salary scheme. It's not a defined benefit scheme like you would get if you worked for your local authority, the government, or you're an MP or policeman, fireman, nurse, or whatever, doctor. They've got a cast iron, gilt edge, final salary defined benefit scheme that the rest of us don't have. If you just put money into a personal pension scheme or a work-based pension scheme, you're relying on the growth within that fund to actually provide you with your pension. So if the share value goes down, as it has this year, your fund is going down, and you've got to work that much harder. So getting back, I'm making a long point about this, but getting back to this, a lot of people have invested in buy-to-let properties to supplement what they see as a broken system. In addition, various chancellors have had tax grabs on pensions as well, starting with Gordon Brown. It took a $5 billion a year pension tax grab from pensions, people's retirement funds. It was all slipped in quietly in the budget. No one said a word about it. That's what I'm saying. I've chosen to buy buy-to-let property because I feel that I can do something with that, and I can use that to supplement my retirement income. But the government have very much pulled the rug from under our feet in a way, because they've stopped tax relief on the mortgage interest, which is a commercial loan at the end of the day, and that was wrong, and they've just made it more difficult, more legislation, and now this possible higher capital gains. So if you sell a property, you could be hit with higher taxes. But there are ways of legally getting round paying capital gains tax and paying other taxes in properties in the way you structure things. I'm not saying you've got to pay tax. You shouldn't evade tax. You can avoid tax legally. And one way is not to sell the property. You can keep drawing off from the property without actually selling it. It's only when you sell it you're creating that gain. Giving it away doesn't help. If you give it away to your children or grandchildren, that creates a tax event. But there are lots of ways of investing in property that may not just don't just involve buy-to-let properties. So if you're interested in any of those, just drop me a line, charles@charleskelly.net, and I'll put you in touch with some courses. There is a seminar also this weekend on the 19th, e-commerce cash flow, if you want to know how to make money from e-commerce, things like Amazon trading, or maybe turning your business into an online shop, then just drop me a line on that. So I look forward to hearing from you on that, and thanks for all your comments. Thanks for everyone who's tuning in on Facebook Live. AB, John, Des there. Hi Des, Jane, nice to see you again. Great to see you all there. And keep the comments coming through. I've got on there a bit late tonight. I've been out all day. In fact, I was up in London, and I was amazed to see how many shops had actually closed down. I'm going to put up a video later if I can't get time. I was walking along by Madame Tussauds, and all that parade of shops from Baker Street Station up to Madame Tussauds, nearly all of them were closed, apart from a Wetherspoons pub. Nearly all of them were closed. It was terrible. Actually closed permanently, it looks like to me. And then Madame Tussauds was closed as well. I mean, there always a big queue going down the Marylebone Road, isn't it? Almost down to Great Portland Street, of people queuing up to get into Madame Tussauds. Nothing. The whole place was dead. And walking around other parts of town, it was very sad to see a lot of places closed, a lot of pubs closed down as well. Sorry, my light's gone out. So I'll say goodnight anyway for now. Thanks for listening. Have a great evening, and bye for now. Thanks for tuning in on Facebook Live. Bye for now.